I'm Amanda Pritchard. I am the Microsoft 365 specialist. And what I do behind the scenes is we troubleshoot and test a lot of the features and things that are coming out on Microsoft products, as well as provide these trainings. So it's our hope today that this is going to help you to feel a little bit more relaxed about the changes that are taking place. I assure you, it's not as drastic of a change as what you might be worried that it is. So we're going to talk a little bit about the why the change and the what and where the new storage locations are going to be. So right now, because this is a Teams webinar, your mic and your camera are automatically muted. We are going to be recording this, so just be aware of that. I do have the chat open and enabled right now. As we get started in just a few minutes, I'm going to disable the chat only because we got a lot of feedback from our previous sessions that it could be very distracting. So I want to make sure that you have this content, that you're able to follow along, and then we are going to have some time at the end for those questions, and we'll kind of open and close that chat as we have time to answer those. But I assure you that most of the questions that are going to come up are going to be covered within my presentation, so don't worry, we are going to make sure that your voice is heard and that you understand what's happening with this new recording. So let me go ahead and I'm going to get my slides back on and we'll get going. Okay. So the biggest question that we receive and the thing that everybody wants to know is why the change? I understand that we just got started a year and a half ago on this new system in Microsoft Stream, and we just migrated and everybody learned it and everyone's now familiar with it. And now there's a change. Well, for complete transparency, this was not a change that was initiated by OIT. This is something that's come along through Microsoft. They have made the decision that they're going to be phasing out Microsoft Stream. And with that, they're reducing the services, reducing the new features there, and they've asked us to move over to different storage locations. So this change initially, they had propositioned us to do in the fall semester. And I just want to commend our team. Brian Sherwood and Dennis and Rice have been your voice and your advocates to ensure and petition this change to delay it to a time where it's going to be a minimized impact and interference. Having a change like this in the middle of a semester would have been very confusing and frustrating, and we know that, and we advocated for you and sent in appeals to make sure we could delay it to the last extent possible so that it's not adversely impacting you all. So kudos to them. So make sure if you know them, go ahead, give them a shout out for their remarkable help and just making sure that campus was well represented and heard. So that's a little bit behind the why. It's being phased out. They are requiring us to transition over. The change was made yesterday. You may see it on your device today. It may still take another day or two to take effect, but the majority of you all should be able to see these changes that I'm going to be showing you as we're kind of going about this presentation. You could probably follow along with some of the things I'll show you. Okay, so in addition to just kind of sharing the good news or the reason why we're making a change, I want to share some of the good news with you about this change. It's going to simplify sharing. I was going to do a poll real quick. Let me throw this up there, but I want to get a feel for you all in the audience. If you currently use Microsoft Stream. So if you'll just answer this poll real quick, because I know we had on the last training, we had quite a big group that did, but then still quite a few that didn't use Stream. And you may not even know that Stream is there behind the scenes for our recordings. It's just kind of that little storage place, kind of like the kitchen junk drawer where you shove all the things once you're done with it. So I'm watching the responses. We're getting a few coming in. It looks like it's about 74%, a little bit less. are familiar with Stream. So Stream is just kind of where we store those videos. If you haven't used it, sharing a video on Stream can be a little tricky. There's a couple of extra steps to take in sharing that content out. Certain things you have to click that's really easy to miss. And so the new storage location is going to make sharing a lot easier. You're going to be able to share your recordings just like you share your documents and your files on OneDrive. You create that generated link and you're able to distribute it out. In addition, they're improving the playback on videos. So as this is launching and rolling out, you're going to see an enhanced quality in those videos that you post. It's going to look and feel even better. And it still integrates with Teams, so you're still going to have that kind of full experience in using and doing those recordings within Teams. They're going to show up in your channels. They're going to show up in your calendar. You will have access to that content. So it's all kind of in-house. Let's see, 1 second. Okay, and then in addition, you're going to get some enhanced analytics. If you've used Stream, will you use the raised hand feature and raise your hand if you would like better analytics on who's watching and how many people are watching, or who specifically is watching. So I've got a couple of hands going up that want that data. Okay, we're seeing more. Yeah, keep the hands coming. That's one of the requests that we get all the time is you post your video on Stream, and yes, you generally get a basic count. So thank you, y'all, for raising hands. It looks like we've got a good amount. I would love to see that data. That's awesome. So we get that request. We know you want to see that data. One of the new things about the new storage locations is that you're going to get better analytics. So I have on my slide here that shows you a little bit about the number of viewers. I used my own data, and this was just from testing. So there's not a lot of viewers watching my testing, but you'll be able to see that, and you'll be able to get reports at the 730 and 90 days to see if people are accessing older videos. Then coming, they're working towards making sure you can see who actually viewed that, which can be very helpful in classes, or if you're giving an orientation or presenting information that your group, you want to confirm that they did actually see it, and they do know it. So that's kind of a nice additional bonus feature that will be in there as well. Okay, the other big question, so I just want to address this, the elephant in the room. Will you have access to your old recordings? They're not going to poof, be gone, I promise you. They're still going to stay in their little filing bin on Stream. So you do have access to anything that you had before yesterday that was stored on Microsoft Stream. They're still there. They're still being held for you. So don't be worried that those recordings are going to be lost or just disappear from you. You still have complete access to all of your old recordings. So all of those will stay in Classic Stream. That's what they're calling the, formerly known as Stream. It's now called Classic Stream. They are working on a migration tool. That was one of the big things that, again, Dennison and Brian went to bat for everybody for, is that we do not expect or anticipate that you will need to go in and individually download every video and upload it to the new storage location. That's a ridiculous thing to ask, and we would not do that to you. So we are working with Microsoft. They are developing a migration tool that will allow you to mass move all of your old videos into this new location. So when it does eventually down the line get phased out, you'll be able to migrate everything over into one of the new storage locations with just a few clicks of buttons. So it's going to make it a lot easier on all of you. When those do get relocated, so when we're pulling them from the one file into the other, we're also going to be creating redirect URLs, so that if a student or an employee goes back into the old Stream file and is looking for it to try to click on it, it's going to auto forward them to the new location. So it's just going to move them along that pathway. You don't have to do anything. And it's going to carry over any of those transcripts that have already occurred. So again, this move is we're trying to make it as easy on you as possible and try to think ahead of how to advocate for what you need and simplify the process. No action is needed until that tool actually is released. So they're looking at developing that, and they're in the process of it, but it's probably going to be quite a while, so several months down the road before that takes place, and we will receive several months to have that time to move and shift files. So right now I do see 2 hands still raised, and I just wanted to see if you do have a question. I'm going to hover over the participant list and be able to unmute you just because I want to make sure. So let's see, Christy Miranda, I am unmuting you. Did you have a question, Christy?
No, I didn't even realize that. I'm sorry. Thank you.
No, you're completely fine. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing out on anything that you all needed, because I know if you do need something, you can go ahead and raise your hand and let me know. I'm going to go ahead and lower yours. But yes, please feel free to raise your hand because I know it's a little bit different than our typical sessions. So, okay, so all of that's going to be moved over at a later date. You still have access. So what we're going to look at is I want you to think of this as having 2 separate filing cabinets. They have one for private meetings, which would be a meeting like this. I know that this meeting was open to everyone, so it's not really private. You all are here as a public meeting, but just something that you would set up on your calendar. So that's what makes it private, is it sets up on your calendar like you would in Outlook, like you would in Teams. So private meetings go in one kind of filing cabinet. So they're going to all go and be moved into OneDrive. So I want to clarify a few points that's a little bit different than possibly what you've been doing, especially if you we have a couple, looks like a lot of power users in Stream. When you start a meeting, you need to start transcriptions, and you need to press start recording in the meeting. It is a 2-button process. I know that makes it extra work on you. We have been working with Microsoft and said that needs to be all merged into 1 button. We don't need to push 2 buttons for the things that we need. They are working on that, but as it stands right now, it's going to be a 2-button process for another month or so until they get that change implemented. So you have to start transcriptions if you want transcriptions to occur and to show up in the file when you save it. So you're just telling the system that you do want that, and that's critical for accessibility needs. So please be sure that you do the 2-button process when you're starting and recording any meetings. Your recording is still going to show in your calendar and in your chat as usual. There's no change to that. So I'm going to see if I can pull up. Dennison, can you come off mute and just tell me, can you see that okay?
Yep, it looks great.
Okay, so it's still going to show up in your chat when you have a meeting and you have a recording. That functionality hasn't changed. It looks and feels exactly the same. So you can see, here's my meeting. I turned on transcriptions, so there's my transcript, and there's my attendance report. Shows up in my chat. I'm going to go ahead and pop on my calendar here. Let's see, over here. And it is also on my calendar. So I went to that meeting, I went to that original place, and you can see recording, transcript, and attendance. That functionality has existed. It will continue to exist. So anytime you need access to a recording, it's just right there. On the back end, it's just stored in a different location. Rather than on Stream, it's moved to OneDrive. But it's not going to prevent you from accessing it in your typical locations. Pamela, I am going to unmute you. I saw you raised your hand. Yes, ma'am. Oh, I gave you permission to unmute, so you'll still have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can anybody who was in the meeting see that, or just the organizer of the meeting or the person who hit record?
Okay, excellent question. Who can see that? So because you can kind of set up your meeting options. So when you're setting up your meeting options, it takes a little bit of effect there. But because it's a public, it's going to be available to everyone because it says private. It's very confusing, but it's going to be available to those that attended. Now, you as the owner, if you're the meeting organizer, can change that and adjust that. If you don't want that available to everyone, you would just change that in your settings. But by default, it'll be there unless you've put those restrictions in place. Keith, I see you have a question. I'm going to unmute you. Or allow you to unmute. What's your question, Keith?
How can I share a link or share the recording with people who weren't able to attend the meeting?
That's a great question. I love it. Yes, I'm going to show you that next. So one of the ways that you can do that, you can download the recording here by just clicking on it. So it's going to, of course, pop up in a different location for me, but you can download that. You can also, from the meeting chat, you're able to select the 3 dots and you're able to get that link and you can send them that URL directly from that chat if you wanted to do it that way. Transcriptions, you would need to download the transcriptions if they needed that, and there's the 2 different document files if they wanted that. And then in addition, let me just click over here to my OneDrive. So this is the files as those recordings process and take place, they're going to appear into your OneDrive. When they're in your OneDrive, everyone will have a folder that says recordings. When you click on the recordings, you can see all of my recordings based on the title of that meeting and then the date and that information there. So from OneDrive, Keith, you can also select on this, copy the link, you can press share, or you can move it wherever you need to. But all of these are ways where you can get those files shared over. So is there, I see questions. I'm going to try to stay focused just on Teams meeting because we still have to go to channel meetings. David, did you have a question still? Or let's see, allow Mike. I'm getting on you here.
Yeah, Amanda, I do.
Yes.
So I get that these private recordings will go into our OneDrive, but some of us are going to be teaching classes this fall that require remote access. Are we going to have like a Teams channel set up for those public recordings, or is that something that we have to set up as our normal meetings like you were just showing?
So I'm going to show you channel meetings next.
Okay, great.
Channel meetings are set up. Classes, so if you have a question about classes, yes, I was going to do private meetings first, and then we're going to move in, and you'll be able to see what it looks like as a channel meeting.
So we'll have channel meeting. Okay.
You will have channel meetings. They will still appear in that chat, and that's what I'm going to show next. So if there's any questions on channel meetings, I'm going to postpone that for just a second, and I absolutely will cover that. Kurt, I see that you have a question.
Yes, and you may be covering this later on, but in streams we were able to set it up so that that others could not download our videos and download our recordings. Is that still true in both the private and the non-private?
It is. Y'all are just like, it is my next slide. I promise I'm going to let you know. Let me get back over here. Raj, I see you have a question. Kurt, I promise you, I'm going to get to that right next. Are there any questions before we go to channels though? I just want to make sure there's no questions on these team meetings, individual group meetings. If you have a question on that, let me make sure and tackle those before we move on to the next. Raj, did you have a question?
Yes, Amanda, this is about the private meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
When we initiate a meeting, it's under the net ID of that person, and the recording is accessible only to them. So if the account gets closed, if somebody moves out of UTD, all the recordings for that net ID, will go away too. Am I right?
I'm not sure about that. I might have to defer that to Dennison, because when we were testing, when we gave access, multiple people were able to. So Dennison, do you want to help tackle that one with me?
Of course. So what's going to happen when, and this is just instruction that I've gotten from Microsoft, is if someone, say, leaves the company and all of their recordings that they have are there, if it was private meetings, then technically there would be probably a grace period in between that point where we can move those videos over to a separate shared location if we needed to have those shared. Now, every time that someone creates a private meeting and then they have users come into that private meeting, everybody who were part of that meeting has access to that meeting. So even though the owner is gone, technically the users who are a part of that meeting at that point in time would at least have access to view said video. It's still something that's still being talked through and worked through with Microsoft to try to get a solid thing. So that is a very good question, and it's feedback that I can actually talk to them about and ask them about. But currently, there's going to be a point where we can kind of move stuff over.
Thank you, Dennison. And I'm going to take Lev's question next. And we only have about less than 7 minutes left. So I'm going to ask to pause questions until after I cover. I'll take Lev and then we'll pause on questions so I can make sure and cover what we have scheduled for today. So Lev, what's your question?
Okay. Are automatically generated transcripts editable the way they are in Stream?
Editable. So you can say that better than I can. That's why I didn't say it. You would need to download the file. It's not like you can just go right in and type over those. So you would need to be able to download that and make those edits.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. We're going to go on now, and I promise I will have some time for questions. I know it's a lot of new content, and we absolutely want to make sure that you're comfortable with these changes. Okay, so the next piece of content that we're covering are Teams channel meetings. So again, if you're a faculty member or if you run a large team or a group, I do this with campus communicators, the team that I manage, and we do our meetings as channel meetings. If you're a faculty member, the teams are set up just the same way they have been in the past. Your classes will be divided into channels. Those are just kind of segments within that team. And you'll be able to set up your classes as channel meetings. So just to go over, same process you'll need to start the transcriptions. You need to start the recording for each class. It is a 2-button process. We're working to revise that to simplify. The recording, just like I showed you, shows up in the calendar and the chat. That's not going away, so you'll still see it in the same locations like you did previously. Let's see, and then it's also going to pull up in your files. So forgive me, I'm going to look away for just a second and pull up a sample of this for you all. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can see that. So this is one of the teams that I manage. So just like it would be set up like a classroom, this is a team. This would be the channel meeting. So you can see it's right here. Here's the test that I did. Still shows up within that channel. In addition, a faster and easier way to navigate to it, or if you have students needing help, it's going to now show up in that file tab so that you can quickly, so you can see I went from post up at the top to files up at the top. And then you can look in the recordings and you can drill down to select what specific recording that you're looking for. And it's going to be stamped with that date in there as well. Same thing, 3 dots to be able to click and share it. But for class purposes or group purposes, it automatically shows up in that feed. So there's not a lot of extra you have to do to get it to students. It's going to automatically display there for them. Channel meetings will also display in SharePoint. I'm going to show that in just one moment, but just to make note, only meeting owners can edit or delete those recordings in the channel. So you can have those restrictions set up in place in channel meetings to be available just for that channel, so that it doesn't have to be a publicly displayed recording. I know that was a concern with a lot of our faculty, so there are restrictions put in place so that it's available to your class, and you can just have that restriction there, and they can't inadvertently delete it or move it. Only you would have the ability to do that. You still have that ownership. Okay, so I showed that it was located in the Files tab. This is just showing that it still shows up in that post chat. So now I'm going to move over. I have to maneuver through all my tabs I have. I'm just going to quickly show you what it looks like in SharePoint. So if you're not familiar with how to navigate here, you go to office.com, or when you click on the video, it's going to automatically just pull up to the site. But if you go to office.com, that gives you access to all of the Microsoft products. So it's kind of this wealth of information. Anything you need, it's there. And to find a specific platform, you would just select on these dots, and then you'd be able to go to SharePoint to find your recordings. So I just pulled up a different testing team that I have just to show you a different variation. This is a channel meeting like classes or different groups would be set up. So you can see here, I can just scroll down. I've only done a few testings in this channel, so there's just those 2 videos there, but you're able to see it there, and then you can click on it and it will pull up that video. So I'm going to mute this because usually when I test, I just say that I'm testing. We don't need to hear that. But you'll be able to see it and be able to view it and watch it here. I wasn't on camera. Well, there, now I've silenced myself. But this is just going to show up. It would be a recording. I didn't have my camera on for this, but you can see the various abilities here for you to either share it, copy. If you want to have a downloaded file, you can do that as well, all just by clicking on it. Those quick links will be there for you. So within the SharePoint site, there's not a lot that you have to navigate to get around to that. I did want to pull up. Let me see if I can get that back up real quick. Maybe. But within that SharePoint site, really all you're going to be doing is clicking on those videos or clicking on the analytics if you're curious to see how many are watching your videos and reviewing your content. So keeping close eye on time. I know we're about out of time. I wanted to touch on very briefly the importance of ending a meeting if you are the meeting organizer. So this is critical for faculty, especially if you have a class that's going on. There is an elusive end button that I know a lot of people are not familiar with. So I have a recording of me demonstrating this, because if I pressed end now, then we would end. So let me turn my sound on. I'm going to play this just so you can see where this end button is and understand the why behind it.
Meeting organizers have the option to end a meeting for all of the participants involved in a Teams meeting. Doing so ensures that your attendance record processes as well as your recording. It also ensures that anyone who is wanting to stay and hang around the meeting will have to exit. To do so, from the meeting options at the top right, select the down arrow and then select End Meeting. That will conclude your session.
Okay, so that's just important to note. So if you have ever been in a meeting and you see it still going on after you've pressed the leave button, oops, I hear something going on.
Subscribe and click the bell icon to turn on notifications.
My YouTube was still going behind the scenes. But if you want to make sure that you in that meeting, it's going to make sure your attendance roster processes, those transcript process, and that recording. So be sure to hit end when you're finished with a meeting if you're the organizer. So I always get questions as to if today's session was recorded, if there's a way to review the content that we have shared. It is. I'm going to ask Dennison to open up chat and be sure to throw this throw a link in the chat for everybody so that if you do want to go back in and review, we have all of our previous trainings as well as quick tips all on our YouTube channel for you to review. So we've opened up chat. I wanted to allow a few minutes. I know we were supposed to end at 11:30. I apologize. There's a lot of content and great questions. So if you do have a question, you can post it in the chat. Feel free to raise your hand, but this is our opportunity to make sure we've answered everything. So I got a question in the chat that says, when does old classic stream go away? Classic stream, we don't have an end date yet. They're not going to end it until we have that migration tool and until we have had time to maneuver everything over. So for now, it's still open. So the difference between the leave and end button is the next question that I received. That leave button means just like you're walking out the door. So people might still be in the meeting. We may still be having a discussion happening, and you just had to walk out the door, the virtual door. End means I own this meeting and I have said, enough, we're done. We've covered the content. It's over. And it forces anybody who's still in that meeting to exit the meeting. It prevents any additional conversation from happening, and it allows all of those recordings and transcripts. It's only available to the meeting organizer. So only the person that set up the meeting can say, enough, we're done. As I continue to answer these questions that I see popping up, I know some people have to go. If you have a minute, if you can scan this QR code, we love to know how we're doing, how these trainings are beneficial to you. It does take a lot of extra time and effort to make sure we're getting this information to you in the most reasonable amount of time and relatable content. So if you want to scan that and just have it up on your phone, it's a 4-question survey. It really helps us to plan these moving forward and to make sure that this type of information and Q&A is beneficial, as opposed to sending out the emails and having those articles for you to read.